All right, everybody, welcome back to Cricket Daily. It's the Ashes edition. It's day 2 of the MCG test. I'm Menners. I'm joined by my co-host, Paul Dennett. Well, there is so much to get through today, Paul. We've got the fact that the Ashes are hanging by a thread, and I'll get to that in a minute, but you have to say that last hour where England were destroyed to be 4 for 31 was one of the most compelling passages of play in Australian cricket for a long time.
Yes, it certainly was. And I've just tried to recreate it, watching it on replay on KO because I was listening to it on the radio. After having watched every single ball of the test match to date, we had no choice but to be in the car for that last hour. I don't blame my wife and daughter who are within earshot. They're wonderful. But it was good on radio. But when they're talking about scenes reminiscent of the 81-82 day, Boxing Day, when Dennis Lilly was steaming in, and I just watching it on the highlights then, you did get that feeling of there are only about 30-something thousand there that day, so just over 40,000 there today. And I often criticize the Australian crowds for not having the atmosphere of the English crowds, but geez, it would have been good to be there at the MCG or even to be watching it on TV.
Yeah, absolutely. Just an incredible finish. Cummins and Stark were immense. And then Boland, the local boy on debut, caps it off with 2 for in and over. What a scene. And for those that are catching up, Australia were bowled out for 267, so they led by 82. And now England will have to do well to make Australia bad again. But let's go back to the beginning of play. So this morning I saw that England were delayed getting to the ground because 4 members of their touring party, 2 staff and 2 family, have tested positive to COVID in the lateral flow tests. Now, all the English players passed their lateral flow test, and that is why the game was able to go ahead today. But, Paul, the big issue now is all the team and the squad have gone for PCR testing, so the real proper stuff. And overnight, if a number of English players come back with positive tests, there is a very good chance this test match may not go on. The Ashes could be in jeopardy. Looking at the scoreboard, the English should be desperate to find any way to get out of here.
Yes, it's going to be an interesting day tomorrow. I suppose, in theory, given that the lateral flow tests were all negative, you'd hope that the PCR tests should all be negative as well. But even if that's the case, you sort of get the sense that maybe that's just a stay of execution for this series, that we feel as though we're going to have similar moments to this, either in this test match or in the 4th or the 5th test matches. And it's a difficult situation to be in. I understand that Nick Hockley has predictably so far confirmed that the plans are to very much go ahead with Sydney and Hobart for the 4th and 5th test matches. But as with everything with the virus, if you do the right thing, you're often seen to be doing it too early. Now, I think Cricket Australia probably should really consider saying we're going to play the 4th and 5th tests in Melbourne, because they might regret it if they eventually get to Sydney and Sydney's epidemic is exploding out of control more quickly than Melbourne's. And also Malcolm Conn's making the point in the Sydney Morning Herald that New South Wales and Tasmania take a much stricter view of what close contacts are able to do. That in Melbourne, if you're deemed a close contact, once you test negative, you're sort of free to go. Whereas in New South Wales and Victoria, it's about 7 days that you have to isolate no matter what. So that could be a pretty serious issue for the Ashes.
Absolutely. So, jumping on a few of those things. So, I think what Nick Hockley said in his press conference today is pretty consistent with the way he handles all his media opportunities. He's very definite. So he was very definite in saying they were going to play in Perth, or they were going to try and play in Perth. And he pretty much took the same line today. But I think there was an acknowledgement that it's a day-by-day prospect. So, he could come out today and tomorrow and say it's something totally different. As you say about the conditions with the testing, that's true. So there was an article by Sam Landsberger saying that Cricket Australia is seeking an exemption to that for the players, that if they're close contacts, that they have to isolate for a week. And apparently the state government's looking at changing that anyway in the next week. So, there's a few balls in the air, but quite practically, Paul, there's triple the amount of cases, maybe more, in the community in Sydney and in New South Wales. So bringing the English and Australian teams here, you're taking more risk just bringing them here, like to this environment where they could come into contact with it more readily than in Melbourne.
Exactly. And I think that if the boards had their way right now, they would institute a formal lockdown for the players. But I know that if they broached that subject, the response from the players might be not all that keen, because we've got roughly 3 weeks left. The Ashes are due to finish on the 18th of January. And given the amount of money at stake, I think that's what I would want to do if I was an administrator. But, understandably, every series the players play, and that's what the administrators would ultimately want to do. So they've got to kind of draw the line somewhere. And also, concerningly, I think that the positive test rating in Sydney today, or New South Wales today, was something like 6% of all tests returned a positive case. Now, back in the early part of the pandemic, most days the percentage of positive tests in New South Wales was 0.0 something. So the fact that it's now 6% indicates that the true number is much, much higher, because some people haven't been tested yet, haven't been able to get tested. So yes, it's going to be very difficult for the series to remain COVID free once they hit Sydney.
Yeah, because my inkling is that Cricket Australia, because of the financial implications, will be desperate to play all the tests wherever they're played, just so they can get on TV. So, as you say, if they have to make the call, we'll just stay in Melbourne. Sam Landsberger wrote in his piece, everybody's there. The hotels are close to the ground. They could pretty much probably get through the rest of the series, play one of them as a day-night test at the MCG. As someone who would be gutted not to go to the Sydney Test, I think it's a very realistic prospect. So, look, yeah, who knows? Tomorrow we could be talking about the end of the Ashes. I mean, Australia could beat England. It could be 3-0. A few players come back positive and everyone just decides to pack up their kit and go home.
Which would be obviously an enormous pity, but certainly not beyond the realms of possibility. And I mean, given that the series, England, it might be academic in the sense that after 2 hours tomorrow they could be blown away completely, but they've still got that faint hope with Root and Stokes at the crease, and with the pitch not necessarily the easiest to bat on. A couple of decent partnerships, it still could get interesting. They're at their last chance saloon today. I think they've kind of forestalled that one more day. So they had a pretty good day for most of the day and it ended terribly, but they're still just about in there surviving.
Yeah, you're right. And just going back to the beginning of play, it was our dream scenario where all of the Channel 7 first 11 commentary team was wiped out for the first couple of sessions, and they had to call in the Big Bash team of Lisa Sthalekar, Brad Hodge, Andy Marr, Jason Richardson, which was the most galling of the lot. But yeah, so, I guess if they're all to get to Sydney, there is a chance that all 100 broadcasters could be wiped out, Paul, and it's just you and I calling the whole test, because there's no COVID scares in my living room. I'm telling you that. I am safe as a house. I'm so safe here, and nothing's getting through. I'm ready. If it gets to Sydney and they all go down, I could do the lot. And we used to doing hybrid broadcasts with the Shield, so it wouldn't matter. They could use it for TV and radio.
Yes, I suppose we probably came closer to commentating on the Ashes today than any day in our history, much in the same way that if you stand at the top of a tall mountain, you're the closest you've ever been to the moon.
You bastard. All right, let's get into the cricket. There might not be much of it left. So Australia started the day 1 down. They were rock and rolled for 267. Some notable dismissals. Well, Nathan Lyon went early. The night watchman, he was out for 10, but then Marnus Labuschagne was caught Root bowled Wood for 1. I thought England bowled exceptionally well to him early on, and he never really settled.
I haven't looked at the numbers, but has he ever failed in an Ashes match before? Like, my memory is that every single time he's gone out to bat, he's got at least 50. So that was, Yes, that was unusual. I think both Labuschagne and Smith, and certainly Green, were guilty, as I've said a few times in this series, of just being a little bit too defense orientated on that pitch. I mean, Labuschagne and Smith didn't last very long, so you can't blame them too much. But I think that when you look at the way that Cummins and Stark played, that a good 30 or 40 on this pitch was probably worth more than that. So that's something that they should have probably been a little bit more attentive to, especially Green, I think.
Well, Steve Smith, I mean, that was a jaffer to get him for 16. Jimmy Anderson bowling him through the gate. Travis Head, he made a handy 27. I didn't think he looked too bad. It was, I would say, a slightly soft dismissal, to just nicking at one.
Yeah. It was I was talking to my my wife's cousin during that, and sort of educating him on the cricket, and even he was sort of saying, "Why did he play that shot?" And was sort of saying, "Yeah, he should have either left it or smashed it."
But the man who needed to score some runs anchored the innings, Marcus Harris. He made 76. It was a good innings, a couple of half chances, missed stumping when he was on 60 odd, which was a tough one. There was a close appeal. I think he was given out, but when it was referred, it showed he'd hit it. So it was, yeah, look, I thought it was a good innings from Harris. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, you can't be too critical of him. He was kept in the side to do a job like this, and he did it. He'd be obviously bitterly disappointed that he didn't go on and get 100. And I think that's potentially going to be one of the things that he's going to struggle with during his career, that he's got to bat so long in order to get a three-figure score. That a little bit like, he's not as defensive as Ed Cowan, but he's the sort of player that could have a test match where he gets 70 in the first innings and 10 in the second innings, and you think, oh, he's had a really good game, but he's averaging 40 for the match. It's kind of barely a pass mark. But yeah, pleased for him. And that dismissal, were you watching Foxtel or Channel 7 when he was given out and then reviewed it?
I was watching KO, so Foxtel.
Yeah. Did you see the footage they put to air of him having a chat to Ben Stokes afterwards?
Yeah, saying, oh, hotspot shit. Or he said something ruder than that, didn't he?
Yeah, he said hotspot's effing hopeless. And the thing that was amusing was it wasn't live. Foxtel had heard the audio and then decided to put it to air. So
it's their technology.
Yeah, they've just gone, this sounds funny, let's put it to air, then we'll apologize. Like, well, it was a bit strange, but I love that. I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, and then the Australian lower order sort of wagged a little bit. Everyone's talking about Jimmy Anderson's spell between lunch and tea, where he got those couple of wickets, barely conceded a run. Shane Warne said it's the best he's ever seen Anderson bowl in Australia. So Anderson finished with 4 for 33 off 23 overs. It was a classy performance from Anderson, and terrific stuff.
Yeah, and I saw that says that means that his average in Australia in the Ashes is now slightly better than his average in England in the Ashes, which is remarkable, really, because I wouldn't have thought that was the case, but it is. So he's not necessarily done all that well against Australia throughout his career. His main successes have come against other teams, but he just seemed to pitch it that little bit further up and that little bit closer to off stump, which is what kind of everyone has been saying he needed to do. But yeah, fantastic spell. And I think that's why England are still in the game, that if they can get a lead of 150 or more, that's at least something they can bowl out. And if they bowl the same way and the pitch continues to be just, not the easiest, then we could have a grandstand finish.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. Pat Cummins is like James Anderson, but he bowls about 15 kilometres an hour quicker. So there were two interesting press conferences after play, Marcus Harris and James Anderson. Harris said that actually in the lead up to this game, he watched some footage of him playing Test cricket against India in 2018, and he noticed that in those Test matches, he was playing the ball a little bit later. So he tried to do that in this Test match. And I mean, if you're not technically a technician, I guess practically that means you just don't put your hands out too far in front of your body, which it's better to play the ball under your eyes. So certainly worked, getting 76, a better result than before.
It's interesting though that it had to come to this. Like they got the batting coach in there with all the technology available. It almost sounded like this was, I hope this is something that was given to him rather than him having to seek it out, but surely they'd have a package together of all of his best innings and all of his best shots that they can just go bang, 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 bang. It again seems Australia's a little bit on the slow side when it comes to using technology well.
Yeah. And then James Anderson was also on the press conference. There's some great questions. So our mate Malcolm Conn, trying to stir up some shit in the English
I
camp,
saw
said,
that.
why is it that the English bowlers always cop it after losses and not the batters? And Anderson played a very straight bat. His experience hosting a podcast, he navigated the waters very easily. But apparently, he said to ABC straight after play that one of these batters has to make 100 tomorrow, and he was quite pointed about it.
Did you ever used to watch the TV, the British comedy called Drop the Dead Donkey?
No.
It was this British show about a TV newsroom, and they once had a major politician on who's like the deputy prime minister and the host. And on this show, they're in a commercial break. And the host said to the deputy prime minister something like, do you think you guys got any chance in the next election? And he said, no, because our policies are hopeless. Our prime minister's an idiot. And then they went back to live. Welcome back. The election's coming up. Do you think you got any chance in it? And he said, well, yes, certainly, because we've excellent policies and our prime minister's excellent. And I felt like that if Jimmy Anderson could have gone off the record,
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And then Dean Wilson, who's another look. Some of the English journalists, I'm not a great fan of, but I do like the way Dean Wilson asked questions, and he was probing Anderson about whether he was really fit to play in the first test, because they said Anderson wasn't quite ready for it, and Anderson admitted he was ready, he wanted to play, and then Anderson said basically, I felt I was a bit cold going into Adelaide, like it would have been basically, it would have been good to play in the Gabba, so I was, really into it for the pink ball test. So he said it's not easy just to walk up start as a fast bowler. So there's certainly some issues going on with that selection table. I mean, Chris Silverwood's not going to last much longer. And then after all that, Dean Wilson goes to Anderson, so you enjoying this? And Anderson goes, what, this press conference? So it was it was a good one. Now look, and then the Strays tail wag, Green 17, Carey 19, Cummins 21, Stark 24, not out. I thought Green and Carey showed some application. It was very tough batting conditions. How did you read it?
They certainly showed application, and I just think that Green. Actually, Shane Warne said it. He said that he just needs to sort of develop the ability to get off strike and build an innings a bit better. That at the moment he seems to have two modes: total aggression or total defense. And I just think that he's such a good player that he could play more aggressively than that. And what I was really heartened to see was that Cummins seemed to, for the first time in a long time, play more like Mitchell Stark tends to play, and there's no coincidence. This is one of the highest scores Cummins has got for a long time, and he should play that way all the time.
But he's actually said that in press conferences recently.
Yeah, but he said that 3 years ago, and he didn't do anything about it.
He said it recently. He said, "I realized I just wasn't hitting the ball enough."
Yeah, well, that's
don't start on the coaching staff.
No. Have you got? Are you a bit? Have you got a member of the coaching staff in your family or something?
No. No, not at all.
No, I was going to say,
start on them.
Cummins, possibly the only thing that wasn't perfect in his whole life was that, and now he's fixed that. Like, he's basically flawless.
Yeah, that's true. Now, Paul's stat of the day. What have we got?
I've got it here in front of me. I'm going to just look at it. Okay, so far on this trip, Ben Stokes has scored 92 runs from 307 balls at a strike rate of 29.96. I contend that if he goes out there tomorrow and bats in that same mindset, that yes, in theory, it's possible that he could do what he did in Headingley and bat for 2 hours very slowly, and then as the tail comes out, accelerate away and play brilliantly. But I think that more likely is he'll go out there, if he plays that way, fight really hard for 90 minutes and get out and look up, and he'll have batted 13 runs for the day. I think he needs to play tomorrow, and as if it was a 50-over game, and just that's the only way I think that England can win. If their entire side goes out and says we have to play with aggression, they're not going to win it playing sort of attritional cricket.
I mean, they need one of the two out there, Root or Stokes, to play a blinder, that's for sure. All right, let's get into my bad day, good day awards. Now, my bad day award went a little viral yesterday, my Bairstow video. Did you like that one, Paul?
I
Yeah, go on.
I liked how you included not a single word of me. I was just sitting there the whole time nodding. Thanks, mate. It was good to go viral as a nodding. Yep, nod, nod, nod,
Yeah.
nod, nod.
Well, you nodded exceptionally well.
Thank you, thank you.
And that's what happens when you're the editor. You can just I did squeeze you out for Johnny Bairstow. I think you have to accept that he
Yeah.
made a goose of himself. So look, my bad day award, my good day awards. Well, there was a few. My runners up are all the Big Bash commentators who got the call up. What a great day for them. Probably thinking, okay,
That's good day, isn't it?
yeah, good day. So did I say bad day?
Yeah.
No, good day for the Big Bash commentators. They're probably, preparing for the strikers and the heat or whatever, and looking up, strike rates and stuff, and realize they'll be calling the Ashes in a couple of hours. That would have been pretty good. But the winner actually of the Good Day Award is Melbourne, because I mean, you said it in the opening. They turned on a terrific last couple of hours. That was riveting stuff. Sometimes I'm unkind to our Victorian neighbours from the south, but that was the best of the MCG. It was great to see their enthusiasm after a winter of lockdown. So that's the Good Day Awards. And bad day, because I'm feeling sympathetic towards the English, I really feel sorry for those top order players having to go out and face Cummins and Stark bowling that well. And to give you an idea of how good it was, Ben Jones from CricViz tweeted out that in terms of expected wicket outcomes, which is a measurement CricViz must have, the first 5 overs is the best bowling since those records began in 2006. So that's quite exceptional. And those first 5 overs were just phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was very pleased as well for Boland coming in at the end to get those 2 wickets. They do love their own. Victorians, they'll celebrate and cheer any Australian, but they do just give that extra bit for the Victorian. And you've got to feel happy for Boland. And think of the number of times he'd have played at that ground where there would, there might have been 150 in the ground, but you'd look around and you'd think there'd be 0. To suddenly have 40-something thousand people screaming for him, good on him.
Absolutely. And Mitchell Starc was so close to a hat trick. He got who did he get out? He got Crawley out. Then he got Milan first ball, a close LB, but at full speed, it looked out to me. And you saw on Hawkeye, was clipping the top of the stumps. But, I wasn't unhappy with that decision, but I am Australian.
But it just shows again how different people can give different perspectives. I was listening to it on radio, and Gerard Whateley said that was plum, and he thinks that the Hawkeye was unfair on the umpire because he thought it was more plum than Hawkeye showed. And on Twitter, Lawrence Booth from the Daily Mail, who I actually really like, sort of said that it sort of implied that the umpire shouldn't have been giving that out on the field, that there was enough doubt to not give it out. And I always find that hilarious when people assume that the umpires are that level of millimeter precision. Like, you're in the old days, the umpires could err on the side of just giving everything not out because the commentators would just say, "Oh, well, that was probably going down leg." Days,
he was far down the pitch. That used to be you put a stride in and you're not out LBW. I mean, even when I was youngster, young whatever,
youngster. But these days, if you say to yourself, "Oh, look, I just think that might have been clipping, but." Oh, yeah, I better say not out because it's probably going to be umpire's call. It's just as likely to be shown to be 3 red lights. And it might only be a centimetre away from having been umpire's call. Every commentator will say, "Oh, you got to give those out." So I think that people are far too critical of umpires seeing it live and calling it once.
Yeah, agree. And then Root got an absolute rip snorter first up, a leg cutter from Stark that was too good. I mean, it was just moved too far. Electric spell. Mitchell Starc 5 overs, 2 for 11. Pat Cummins 6 overs, none for 14. He could literally have 6 overs, 5 for 5 the way he was bowling. I mean, he could have taken any number of wickets. Scott Boland, 1 over, 2 wickets for 1 run. I mean, if I was him, I'd frame the scorecard now and just go, that was my Dennis Lilly moment at the MCG. England went 1 for 7, 2 for 7, 3 for 22, 4 for 22. Crawley, Milan, Hamid, Leach, all out. Milan, first ball duck. Leach, second ball duck. Whoa, stirring stuff, Paul Dennett.
If you haven't seen it, do yourself a favour. It was 40 years and 2 days ago today that this thing that we talk about, the Dennis Lilly 4 wickets that he took right at the end of the day's play, And that, I believe, was the match that kind of kicked off the Boxing Day Test match tradition. There had been tests on Boxing Day occasionally in Victoria before that, but this one on Boxing Day, they then thought, no, we're onto a winner here. And what's often forgotten as well is that before that, Kim Hughes made 100 not out, arguably the best innings ever played on the MCG Boxing Day test, probably the best ever innings played on Boxing Day against a brilliant West Indian lineup. Australia made 200. Kim Hughes 100 not out, got battered black and blue and smashed them everywhere in between. And then Lilly came out and took 4 wickets, including Viv Richards off the last ball. And as we've been saying, the atmosphere today, very similar to that atmosphere 40 years and 2 days ago.
Absolutely. So look, the state of the play is what England are 51 behind still with 6 wickets in hand. I can actually really see that if Root or Stokes go early, this is all over. By lunch and Australia doesn't bat again. I'm not joking. I could see England rock and rolled for 70 or 80. The counter to that is, Root or Stokes or Butler plays a blind or something. And Australia is set 150 and it's Dean Headley style, 94, 95. We get rock and rolled and England are back in the series. But, geez, it seems a long way away, doesn't it?
Was it 94, 95 or 98, 99?
I mean, take your pick. I don't know. Yeah, I think we'll check. We'll check.
Maybe I'm mixing two up. Was that the one with the Ramprakash catch?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that was 98-9.
Oh, that's because McGill was playing. That's right. McGill was playing. That was the one where. So yeah,
Steve Waugh got 112 not out in the first innings and was there not out at the end at the second, and that's what crystallised Ian Chappell's erroneous view that he was a selfish batsman.
Yeah. All right, let's take these questions because we've been sitting on them for a day. All right, Reece Kemp. Menners. Boland is a good Sheffield Shield bowler. As I said last night, in my opinion, he's perfect for English conditions where it just nibbles each way. What do you think?
So he's basically criticising your comment from last night. And I agree with him. I think that he's more than a Sheffield Shield bowler, but I don't think he's in Australia's best 3. He probably is in Australia's best 7, and that's where they've kind of, or 6, where they've kind of gone to. Yes, he'd be good in England. He's probably someone who should have moved to England when he was 20.
It could be like a Peter Siddle type pick for the next Ashes.
Richard M., can we re-examine the assertion often mentioned on Test Match Special and the like that in a vacuum, these two teams were more or less a match for each other? Australia's retention in England seems to refute this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they look like a better match going into this series than they actually are. And you're right. I mean, it's a flawed assertion because England's last 3 tours down under have been such terrible performances. And when Australia goes to England, we're more competitive. We were, close to winning the 2015 Ashes until, we got bowled out for 60. But, we don't talk about that. We drew the series last year. I mean, you're right. TMS is full of shit on that one.
I haven't listened to enough of TMS these days to know that they say that, but that's nonsensical. Of course, Australia has been a better side. The last time that England were a better side than Australia was 1985 and 1986. Those mid-80s, England were better. Maybe they touched being better around about 2010 again. But aside from that, Australia has been comfortably the better side as they are now. Brewer 74. Is this your turn, is it?
Will the first innings lead be enough to make it an easy chase for Oz in the second innings? What will England need to set to make it a competitive conclusion? Well, that's a good one. Paul, what do you think?
Yeah, I reckon that England would need to set a lot to make them favourites going into the final innings. It would probably need to be 250 or so. If it was 250, then people would be saying England are favourites. That's looking a long way away. I think 180. Australia's failed chasing 100 odd before, but you wouldn't expect that to be the case. If they get 150, 180, at least they've got something to bowl at, and 1 or 2 wickets could make things quite nervy in the Australian dressing room.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're spot on there.
Martin Lawrence, what have you thought of the BBL scheduling so far? I know it's not easy right now, but starting games at 9:30 at night is terrible for television and crowds.
Yes. So what have I thought, Marty? Well, good question. I'm at the end. I'm at the end of a sort of marathon. So yesterday, all day of the Boxing Day test, then into the Sydney Smash Derby, the Sixers smash the Thunder, and then into the Renegade Scorchers, and then a radio spot at like 1 a.m. It was a marathon, and then I realized it's happening again today. Like there's two Big Bash games on tonight. So after this recording, I've got another 3 hours live cricket. So um, I do feel that it is hard for people to get out there and to get big crowds with this. And I've actually finally come to the conclusion that the Big Bash probably needs to go back to 10 games per team, maybe maximum 12, and just shave the intensity of the schedule. But I've got to say, for me, as somebody that is just ravenous when it comes to cricket consumption, I can watch, test match and two Big Bash games 5 days a week for the rest of my life.
I could if I lived alone, and you're currently living alone because your family are overseas. But I think it's too much. But as I've said before, given the weird world we're living in, I'm not going to criticize them. If we're in normal times and they were doing this, I'd be very critical. But I'll give them I'll let them off.
Absolutely. Well, some great questions. Thanks everybody that have written comments and sent in questions. Paul, anything you want to say before we wrap up? Cricket Daily, the Ashes edition, the MCG Day 2, possibly the penultimate edition, Ashes edition, because who knows what could happen tomorrow. Keep your fingers crossed, cricket lovers.
I hope that they all test negative, and I really do hope that England do something tomorrow. I'd love a Joe Root century to then. Australia needs a good runs chase to give this test match something, and it'd be a bit of a pity if we were suddenly at lunchtime tomorrow already 3-0.
Yeah, well, could happen.
It'd be fun.
All right. Well, yeah, I mean, I was saying on the radio last night that it gets to a point now as an Australian where I've gone from wanting a competitive series to now just let's completely embarrass and trounce these losers because you made every mistake you could make. I mean, Pommy Bingo's gone viral. I'm sorry, someone grabbed that from this show, and Pommy Bingo's been because it has been Pommy Tourist Bingo. So anyway, that's all I want to say. Have a great night. Thanks for watching. Paul Dennett, thanks for another great show. Sorry I cut you out of the video last night.
That's okay, Andrew Menzel. It's okay.
All right. Thanks, listeners. Back tomorrow.
Bye.